Good morning, you. And now for
Good
something
morning.
completely different. On some of the seats, which you will have to share, are some little guides of where we're going. And I'm going to ask Tanya to pass out some little drawings that I did of today's lesson, but mine might be a little more advanced than you, but I have a few more years experience than you have. I'll let you pass a few of those out. There aren't enough of those either, so pass them around. To be an artist, any kind of artist, you have to be ready to make some mistakes. To be any good at anything, you need at least 10,000 mistakes. So you better get started. As far as I'm too old to do this, Grandma Moses picked up a paintbrush in her late 60s without any schooling at all and went on to become world famous. I myself retired and then decided to go back and pick up guitar again from high school. There was a long gap, but I still can't play well, but what I do play, it pleases me, and that's part of it. Kathy and I discovered kayaks while we were in our late 60s, and who knew there was a world of things you could do with a kayak? And then she taught me into dance lessons, and we're pretty good doing dances, and we're still learning new things as we've been birders. So there is no such thing as I can't. Yes, you may fail, but you will always learn something from it. Now about trees. Why trees? Well, they are something that a lot of people, especially in the big cities, totally ignore. We're lucky because we have so many trees around us. Unfortunately, we have what's called a forest desert where they're all one tree, and it's a crop that they cut it down every 15 to 20 years and replant them with the same tree over and over again. But you can find a few places where there are a variety of trees. I have some samples, we'll talk about those later, of what trees can look like. If you have never done it, you need to experience something called forest bathing, where you just go into the woods and you don't take your phone out of your hand, you keep it away, turn it off if you can, and just be quiet, listen and walk and enjoy, hear the birds, notice the planes flying over. It's hard to get away from them. Notice the sounds of the highway 4 or 5 miles away, but sometimes you can get away from that. But notice all the nature, the crunching, the smells, the mushrooms. We'll get into that later. All right. I'm going to teach you, and you're going to follow my directions. Yes, you will make mistakes. It won't be pretty. Who cares? Pencil, paper, ink pen, something to write on. Please don't write on the hymnals. We have some extra papers in the back if you don't. Somewhere in the United States, when you were a little fella or girl, someone showed you how to draw a tree. And most adults today, if you ask them to draw the tree, this is the tree they will draw. It looks like this. And it has a nice big fat trunk underneath. And it has a little hole for little birdies to live in. And it may or may not have some little branches stuck to it on either side. And that's pretty much everybody's tree because they're afraid to go any further than that. So we're going to break that out of your little brains and try to replace it with a slightly better tree. It's not a real tree, but it looks a lot better. So let's begin. We're going to start with a pine. This is tag team folks. If I could have our first slide up, please. We're going to start with a pine tree, the southern pine. That's what we have around here, but there's so many other things you can do with it. First, you know what a toothpick is. You're going to draw a tall, skinny toothpick. It doesn't have to be very straight, but you want it to be very narrow at the top and get very, very skinny and just get a little bit fatter towards the bottom. If you want to color it in, that's fine. But it doesn't have to be. So draw your toothpick right now. You've got 10 seconds. It doesn't take long to draw a toothpick. Come on, go, go, go. Way back in the first grade, you learned to speak English and you learned to write the letter Y. This is the letter Y in our good old first grade. In art today, we're going to take that Y and turn it into a slightly crooked Y. Not so pretty. And on the tip of your toothpick, put the skinniest little Y you can. Well, I hope you can see that, all you other people at home. And we're going to imagine there is a sort of a triangular shape around the top of our pine tree here. We're going to draw some slightly longer crooked letter Y's that go out to the left or out to the right. And as we work our way down, they get a little bit longer each time, but they never go above the ones on top of it. So a little longer, a little more crooked, until you get about 1/3 of the way down. And then something happens to these little tree branches. They start to get shorter. Because what happens is they run out of sunlight, so they start dying off. And as they die off, they break off until there's just a little stub left. And that's already looking like a nicer tree, right? But there's more. To some of those branches, you want to attach an even smaller crooked letter Y, and some of them are going to fill in the gaps in here. And they can go up, they can go down, they can go on top of another branch even. So just pick a spot here and there, and just put a few of these little tiny crooked letter Y's. Some will be a little longer, and some won't. And now our tree is looking a little better again, we hope. Now, time out. There's a cousin to the southern pine called a fir tree. If you were to continue these branches going out, down, down, until you get about to here, then you've done a fir tree, the most famous being the Douglas fir. Its trunk would get much thicker because the tree's more massive. They can get up to be, 80 to 120 feet tall, whereas a southern pine, it's topping out at about 80 feet at maturity. To help make our pine tree look a little better, we need to add something called pine needles to it. Now, right now, we've just drawn a pretty decent dead pine tree. Guess what? There are some of those out in the forest, and those dead pine trees become home to the woodpeckers and to thousands of boring beetles, which then other birds bore into to get them back out again until it finally breaks down and becomes part of the forest for recycling stuff. Anyway, to make our pine tree look a little better, you're going to take and draw a bunch of little tiny X's because pine needles have little points on them. And it would take forever to sit there and draw 1,000 of these little points one at a time. So what I do is just draw as fast as I can, X's on top of X's on top of X's, just over and over and over again, almost like your hand is having a spasm attack. But when you start doing a bunch of those X's, lo and behold, your brain picks up a signal that says, that kind of looks like a live pine tree. What do you think? It's pretty easy. Now, if you were doing color pencil, if you were using a dark green and a light green over and over again on top of each other, it starts really looking much better. Now, will we have enough time to complete the whole tree during this short time this morning? Probably not. But this will get you started. And hopefully you'll go home, and when you get one of those phone calls that somebody's talking on and on, you can bring your piece of paper and continue your drawing and, keep working on it. Was it last week? I was sitting here with my sketchbook, and one of our members noticed over my shoulder I was sketching on a picture. And she said, "I noticed you were working on something in class in the church." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you complete it?" I said, "Yes, but you have to realize I started this picture back in 2007. just now getting around to finishing it." So art doesn't matter. It's just when you finish it. Now I'm going to lock this into your memory. This is what a southern pine sort of looks like. And we've already talked about, if you extend those down, it becomes a Douglas fir. But there's another cousin. He lives out in California that's related to this thing. It's called a redwood. This is the same look that a redwood would have, except the redwood, the trunk would get fatter and fatter and fatter, and it would keep on going and keep on going and stop about right here. So a redwood needs a lot of space for a large sheet paper. But there you go. If you wanted another tree, you could turn that same tree into a redwood. If you wanted to turn it into sequoia, one of those other cousins, it gets even fatter, but not quite as tall as the redwood. But they're still going to go all the way down to about here. Then there's another cousin that lives up here in the swamps all over the southeast. And on this one, which is one of my favorite trees, we're going to take out a little bit of the bottom. I'm doing that because I need everybody to see it. What if you put some little hips on this bad boy here? I've got a little bit of a hip problem here. And then you kind of put some little wavy lines around it like this. And all of a sudden, you've got one of the cousins lives in a swamp called the cypress tree. And with that little simple move right there, you turn this tree into something completely different, but not all that different. And of course, you could always put a couple of little knees near it, because they usually grow in fairly shallow water. If you really want to be cool, you can start throwing some tall grasses in there, because they like all kinds of these weeds. And a little quick thing you can do, you can throw a tall stem and put a little hot dog shape on the end of it. And you got some cattails. And just a few little strokes here and there, you've got a pretty decent little picture already started. I've cast out some little drawings that I did, and you'll probably see the cypress tree with some little swampy waters and maybe a duck or two floating around. And those only took about 5 minutes or so to do. So here's another option. I've got the fir up here, but it's got a different top to it. I'll show you how to do that one. This time, you imagine the toothpick is there, but you're only drawing the bottom half of the toothpick. And instead of drawing the zigzag lines with the X's, we do a whole new top. I'm going to switch over to my green pen here. For you young folks, you ever seen these old people that's got shakes and they just can't control their hand? If you're one of those old people and you are the perfect artist for the next step, because imagine that you're going to attach a triangular shape to the top of this little base here with that shaky hand. So you just kind of have to imagine your hand just can't draw a perfect straight line at all. You're just going to draw this weird little, man, I just can't control my hand. But by the time you get back to where you started from, it kind of looks like a decent little tree. And that's an easy way to draw a fir tree. And after you've got it sketched in, go get your little watercolors and fill it in. Voila, it's the tree. The cedar is very similar, except these little squiggles need to be a lot tighter because cedar needles are so tiny, so tiny. And occasionally there are air gaps, so you'll be able to see a little bit of sky in there. So occasionally have a little spot where you can see people do where the sky is poking through. And that helps make it look a little better as well. All right. We've drawn 3 trees in 10 minutes. How we do it? We got 1 tree. She's got 3 trees. You got 1 tree. All right.
I have 2.
Oh, you got some on the other page. Excellent. Katie, you're further, so you good? All right. Now let's get into something completely different. These are a little harder, but they're not so hard that you can't do it. Denatural. Wonderful new beach. All right. This tree. Well, let me just back up a little bit. All trees, when they start on the forest floor, they from a little seed, and they just kind of come out of the ground and they stick their one little tendril up. And then they get a little taller, and then they may have a little branch coming out. Eventually, they can get up to where I got some sun, and they start to spread out. Pine trees go about kind of like this. The next tree gets up there, and it sends out branches, and it goes, now I've got some sunshine. So that's what we're going to do. A tree with a few more branches sticking out. So let's draw a ground line. Here's the ground. Rarely is the ground line straight. Only time it's straight is when they're preparing to put in another Walmart.
Yeah.
Or if you're on Highway 16, that big plant down there. From the ground line, we have a couple of roots coming up, and then we go up. A couple of roots going out, and then we're going to go up. We're going to stop there and let you get caught up. We're going to do a modified Y. Part of it's going to go off a little bit. How thick is the branch going to be? And where it meets the main trunk, put a little curve in there and follow the main trunk up. You see that? It's not a point. If it's a point, you get a strong wind, it's going to break off. Pecan trees, they almost always grow to a point, and pecan trees, they always break off again when the strong wind comes off. But you'll find some of the other trees that no, that curve in there, that's much stronger with that curve in there. If you want to have a branch on the other side, it can do the same thing, doesn't have to be parallel. Oops, I made a little mistake. Looks good though. Trees don't have perfect edges to them. And we could do this multiple times. I'm going to just do one branch, but I'm going to erase it so you don't have to do this. If you want to do the tree in the wintertime, each one of those can branch off again and again and again. And each time it branches off, it gets a little bit skinnier, and eventually you're just drawing little tiny crooked Y's again. You see how it goes on and on and on, and goes out and out and out. But that would take a long time to draw the entire tree in the wintertime. But if you've got nothing to do, it's fun, actually. But in order to save time, we're going to turn this into an easier type tree. Once again, your shaky hand, and I'm attach a weird balloon on top of it. Let it touch any of these pieces you've already drawn, and just keep going into this weird balloon shape. All the way around till you're back to the beginning again. And you have It could be a pecan or an apple or any of the other fruit trees. If it was skinnier, it'd probably be a peach tree. Could be a hickory. You want it to be an elm tree, it would be a lot taller, thicker branch, but this is a starting point. One of my favorite trees, though, which we're going to do next, is the live oak. And the live oak, its survival method is when it gets up to this stage here, it says, I'm going to send some of these roots out over here, and steal some of your water. And then I'm going to push this branch out here and steal some of your sunlight. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to spread out. And then, and most other trees are going, how tall can I get? Live oak is going, how wide can I get? Because I want all this water and all this sunlight for me. So they are unique in the kingdom of trees. So we're going to put right over here next to our, whoops, wrong color. Whoops, mistake. We're going to bring our ground line over. And we're going to start with our root, kind of going across for a little bit. And we're going to go up for a little. And I'm going to let this one have a little problem. I'm going to take that out and put in a second little root coming towards us a little bit. Maybe a third one. Maybe a fourth one. I don't know. And if you let the edges be kind of lumpy, they look kind of cool. And eventually we're going to take any of those and some of the branches are going to go out and maybe even back down again. Got to push that pencil. It won't do it without your help. I've got to switch sides. I'm going to try left-handed. I'm going to go and put a few little branches over here. What if it runs off the paper? Guess what? Some trees just don't fit on one canvas at a time. Look at that one over there. They're going way off the paper. You know what? Your brain doesn't care at all. You notice I'm leaving the top kind of empty because I'm going to do one of those shortcuts, finish out this tree. And I think it's going to look pretty cool when we get there. This is a neat little trick. I'm going to let this branch be in front of that just a little bit. And this branch be in front of that a little bit. And where that little bump is, I'm going to put a little hole in it. Like there used to be a branch, it fell out, rotted away. And now the tree has grown up around it. I'm going to give a little suggestion that there might be a little knot there now. You can do little mistakes and turn them into positive mistakes. We call that happy accident. Picasso was wonderful at having happy accidents. And there are some artists who work with dynamite. That's all they live for is what is it going to do after I set this dynamite off? And then you have those artists that like to demolish things. They're all about controlled accidents. How many musicians have been sitting around with their guitar just plunking something and all of a sudden, ooh, that was cool. How can I do that again? All right. Finish out at the top. That shaky hand again. Let it go up and down, you know, touch all of those branches. And, you know, some of these trees, the branches even go down to the ground and come back up again. And sometimes they get so they need a little help. So you see somebody's come in and put a post to help hold them up. What if it went behind the other tree? No problem. You see how the tree grows out, not necessarily up. It brings out the paper. And of course, there are going to be a few places where you can see some sky in there. Those of you that want to try a little bit of shading, now this is where it gets a little, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess it up. Yeah, you might do that. But then again, it might turn out to be cool. But if you have a regular pencil, now probably yours for a second, hold it sideways with your finger almost on the lead. And you're going to shade with that flat part of the pencil as much as you can. Figure out where the sun is coming in. I'm going to pretend the sun is coming from this side. And yes, most of the tree is in the shadow because the canopy is blocking the sun. But still, it's going to create a little bit of shading on the bottom side of those branches. So what if you kind of fill in a little bit and let it leave a few spaces in there. We're going to go around that now. Just like a few quick lines of shading like this. And I just wanted to show you how a little bit of shading can just completely change the entire look of this tree. Even though I'm doing it with a marker, which is almost impossible to make it look good. But then I'm a little smarter than the average fan. And I've been doing this a little longer than this people. See, isn't that funny? Will it work with the green marker? That's fine. Some of you have, my drawings where I took the side of my pencil and shaded darker and lights in this canopy area. And you can see what I'm talking about with just shading. And how it gives it a little more of a 3D effect. Now, this takes a little bit longer to get the whole effect, but you can kind of see where it's going. And I didn't want to leave without doing one more tree, because I got it in me, and I think we got time. So while you're doing that, I'm going to show you one more little tree. Now, this tree is not a native. It was brought over here by the Europeans 300-400 years ago, planted because they were so cool. And they started off kind of like our little live tree here. And they have a few little lines like this. That's the basic start. But then what makes this tree different from all other trees in the world is every spring it sends off new growth. And they start off as long, skinny. I can't think of the word right now. They go really tall, but then they're so tall and long, they start falling back down. And if you draw about 3 of these for every little tip of your Y, and within moments, you will know exactly what kind of tree I'm drawing. We call them the weeping willow because they're constantly dropping little bits of moisture from their little openings in their leaves. So it's continually air conditioning itself. They're the only trees that have built-in air conditioning, where they drop this moisture and it cools the air. So no matter how hot it is out there, around the base of the tree, it's nice and cool. And this tree is going, yes, come on, sons, do your thing. And meanwhile, it's getting bigger and bigger. If you have a willow tree, though, it's found where your water source is. It's either in your septic system, or it's digging into a broken pipe, or it will dig into your make a pipe broken for you. Or it's near an edge of a pond where there's plenty of water. Now, this is a willow without its leaves. To do the leaves, you need to draw thousands of little, tiny little flakes on each little branch, and all of them hanging down, one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here. But you could just leave it like that. Or take a little splash of watercolor and just drop some green in there, and you're done. Really simple. I am done for this short session drawing, but I do want to talk about my good friend Wanda. This is her painting of 3 live oaks. She is self-taught. She started painting in her late 50s. And within a few years, she is a master artist and a great friend of mine. This is one of mine. This is called The Survivor. It's in Craggy Gardens off of the Blue Ridge Parkway, on one of the trails to the top of the peak there. It's just a magnificent tree growing on this flat rock and surviving after storm up there. Some of it tearing down limbs, but it still has that just wonderful look to it. And over here, this is another of my paintings from when we went to Panama. We went up into the cloud forest. This is what a cloud forest looks like. I mean, you're in the clouds, they're drifting through, and it's really hard to paint clouds. I want you to know it's misting through. But these trees, we're standing on a road that goes like this, into a subdivision that for the rich people of Panama. And we're looking from the roadside, it just drops down. So these trees are coming from 50 feet below us, way up above our heads. Just amazingly tall trees and just massive amounts of greenery. And we're watching for birds flying through. Oh, there's one. This one, we caught a bat falcon flying by. One of our photographer friends with a lens about this long got it and shared it with us. So that's our memory of that falcon flying by as the sun was trying to break through the clouds that morning. That's Thank you very much.